We're very pleased to have Brian Stubbs with us. Brian Stubbs received his MA in Linguistics under foremost specialist in Udo-Aztecan and near PhD ABD in Semitic languages, Hebrew, Arabic, and Aramaic, which enabled him to publish the reference work Udo-Aztecan Comparative Vocabulary, lauded by linguists. There's more in his bio, you can read it, but just with that very short introduction, we're going to turn the time over to Brian Stubbs.
No clock here. I am a blue shirt with evidence for the historicity or actual posterity of Leahy in the Americas. We're going to talk about Native American languages relevant to the Book of Mormon. Believers and non-believers have both assembled their separate sets of misconceptions about the Book of Mormon. So as truth emerges, everyone gets to be surprised in some ways, myself included. One Native American language family has been identified, appearing to descend from the Nephi Muleki merger. I'll pronounce those like they do in Hebrew or Egyptian, either one, which answers three previous unknowns about the Book of Mormon languages. Now, at this point, I want to talk about this language family. There is a map of the Udo-Aztecan language family, but it would be good to keep in mind that there are over 170. Some estimates, Lyle Campbell has 173 or 4, and others have 150 some, but generally 150 to 170 plus language families. One language family is a group of related languages descended from the same ancient language. So that means if we have 170 language families, each one is not related to the other 169 as far as we know, or as far as linguists can determine yet. That is a huge variety of languages in the Americas, about 1,500 languages, possibly 2,000 before some of them are wiped out, divided into 150 to 170 language families. However, a few of these, a handful, do have interesting parallels with Hebrew and Semitic. The Semitic language family includes Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, and Akkadian, and Ethiopic, and a bunch of others, but mainly for our purposes we deal with Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic. But let me just also say that the history of Udo-Aztecan studies began with Edward, well, it didn't begin there, but Edward Sapir was the first linguist to establish Udo-Aztecan as a viable language family. He, and that was with two publications in 2013 and 2015, so almost exactly 100 years ago. About 50 years after that, three other authors put together a more cohesive set of Udo-Aztecan Cognate Sets in 1962, about a half century after that. 5 years after that, my professor, Wick Miller, put together Udo-Aztecan Cognate Sets that had 512 Cognate Sets. The earlier one had 171. And then Wick Miller continued working on Udo-Aztecan for another 20 or 30 years until he passed away, and he had an unofficial computer file of about 1,100 some Cognate Sets. Kenneth Hill continued, all of us continued working with that. By the way, there are only about 6 or 7 of us in the world that really do research in the whole Udo-Aztecan language family. There are, 20 or 40 others that work on one language or work on a smaller group of languages called a branch. There are about 11 branches in Udo-Aztecan. That means a group of smaller set of languages that are more closely related to each other that broke off, and you can see. Anyway, we don't have time to make linguists of all of you in this short time, but I'm going to try to explain a few things, at least give you the reasons for the evidence, or in fact, that's what we need to do first, is establish the validity of all this. Anyway, so Kenneth Hill and all of us got that group up to about 1,200 something. And then I spent about 20 years putting together this book, which is Uto-Aztecan Comparative Vocabulary. It has 2,700 cognate sets, and all of the other Uto-Aztecanists were very happy about this. They really liked it. It got a good review in the International Journal of American Languages, and I was a good guy. And then I came up with this one, exploring the explanatory power of Semitic and Egyptian in Uto-Aztecan, and they were not nearly so excited about this because it establishes a significant quantity of Semitic, mainly Hebrew, Aramaic, Phoenician, and Egyptian in Uto-Aztecan. However, I have sent this book to the top 12, the other top 12 Uto-Aztecanists, and the responses are interesting. These are non-LDS PhDs in linguistics who specialize in this language family. And 4 of them have actually written back, emailed back with thumbs up. Hey, it looks solid. Looks like you have a strong case there. They might deny it if I told them that that's what they emailed to me, but that's what 4 of the 12 said. The other 8 are silent, really not wanting to comment, hoping it goes away, I guess. And of course, the LDS linguists and Hebrew scholars, a much higher percentage. In fact, from what I've heard back, and it's possible that not all agree with everything, but pretty good, nearly 100% agreement. So it's passed some good tests, even among, I also sent it to a few Hebrew scholars. Just online, I find Hebrew professors of Jewish universities and so forth, and I sent it to a few of them, and about the same percentage, about 1/4, hey, that looks interesting, good, solid, viable, and the others are silent. So it's just now getting out into the academic world, and we'll see what happens. But this one lists 1,500 similarities, or 1,500 cognates with Semitic and Egyptian, about 400 with Egyptian, and, well, I think I got another slide to explain that later. When most language families are established, Native American language families, the first article to appear, or the first article to establish that as a language family accepted by linguists, usually it's an article that appears in a journal, they have between 50 and 200 cognate sets. Now, a cognate set is a group of related words that descend from the same ancient word. And so, 50 to 200 cognate sets. This has 1,500 cognates with Semitic or Egyptian, making it about 10 times as strong a case, given that alone, but there are other factors. Then out of that, this is the more recent book. In fact, it has the same title as the lecture. This takes about, I can't remember, 300 maybe, about 20% of the data in this one, and it explains how it's relevant to the Book of Mormon. This one does not mention the Book of Mormon, just linguistically establishes the connection with some Near Eastern languages. This one, however, explains its relevance to the Book of Mormon. So if you want the whole story, you want this one, and if you just want how it's relevant to Book of Mormon matters, you want this one, and they're both out there, and let's get started, or continue. Oh, the Uto-Aztecan language family, yes. It is located along the west coast of Mexico and in the southwest United States. That whole northern group, linguists can see that they originated in about the LA, San Diego area, and then spread out from there. It includes the Utes and the Hopi and then a whole bunch down in Southern California, Serrano and Luiseno and Tubatalabal and so forth. And then you have those on the west coast of Mexico. You have Pima, and that goes up into Arizona, and Yaqui and Mayo and the Tarahumara and on down to Huichol and Cora. And then off of the map, I didn't include all of the Aztec dialects. There are 15 or 20 different dialects of Nahuatl, and they are all over Central America and into, southern Mexico and then down into Central America. So I didn't include those on the map. Anyway, continuing on, let's see. I have some notes to myself of things I forgot to put. Oh, okay. I think three previous unknowns. One question is the debate began between Nibley and Sperry about when I was being born a few years ago, that Sperry said his opinion was that the Book of Mormon was written in Hebrew and that's the only language the Nephites were dealing with, but written in an Egyptian script. And you might be familiar with the scriptures that cause everybody to have to decide, as if they have to. Whereas Nibley, he said that no, they were dealing with the actual Egyptian language and were dealing with both Egyptian and Hebrew. And that has been being debated by LDS scholars for 65 years now. Long ago I said, well, the best way to find out is to look into languages descended from those languages and see what they have. If they only have Semitic and no Egyptian, then Sperry is right. And if the other Hebraists, most of the other Hebraists that BYU agree with them, or have in the past. But if there's a significant amount of Egyptian, then Nibley is probably right, mixed with the Hebrew, because that's what Nibley said. Their language is probably a Semitic-Egyptian mix. And what did the Nephite language look like? So everybody assumes Hebrew. A lot of problems arise from assuming. And then also, did any of the Mulekite language survive? In the Book of Mormon, it says that the Nephites taught the Mulekites their language. Well, another matter is that most people say, well, the Nephites were all killed off, so there shouldn't be anything left of their languages. Well, there are scriptures in the Doctrine and Covenants and other things that suggest that, no, lots of Nephite survivors, they might have gone by a different name, but in fact, future research will clarify a lot of that I don't have time nor the careful documentation to back it all up that I can see. For example, this book took 30 years, and so I can speak definitively to the evidence of that. Other things I can see is probable, but I don't have it backed up like that yet, and so I try not to comment too much, but there's a lot of interesting stuff. Again, it's not a big percentage, but it's a high enough quantity that it can... Anyway, so what do we know about the Mulekite language? Well, according to the text, we really can't say that we know anything, but we're going to show you a few things. Udo-Aztecan has three separate sets of data from the Near East, from Near Eastern languages. About 400 matches with Egyptian. That's a goodly amount. About 700 matches with Hebrew Aramaic. And it's kind of like a Hebrew-Aramaic mix. In fact, it might even be more heavily Aramaic and less Hebrew. And they have those two bodies of data have the same sound correspondences with each other. So that Semitic, Aramaic, Hebrew has the same sound correspondence as the Egyptian, which means that they're probably spoken or come from the same people. However, there are also about 400 matches with Phoenician, but an entirely different set of sound correspondences, meaning that it was spoken by a different people. It came from a different source. It changed in different ways. Now, Phoenician is basically the same as Hebrew. Hebrew is simply Hebrew and Phoenician and Canaanite are all three the same language, different dialects. Hebrew is the Israelite dialect of Phoenician or Canaanite. However, Phoenician, we'll get into that later. So many ask why the Nephites and Mulekites could not understand each other if they both left Jerusalem just 400 years earlier. For a number of reasons. In fact, let me explain at least three reasons. First of all, tone, accent patterns can throw people off and can change languages in ways that make it very quickly non-understandable. For example, I just retired from teaching English for 35 years, and I will do this exercise. Well, let's see. No, let me back up a little bit. Take a couple of sentences. For example, what's that in the road ahead? Versus, what's that in the road ahead? Now see, they're both questions, and so you'd think, well, a question has a rising tone at the end, right? But even though they're both questions, they have different tone patterns, and the tone pattern gives it a different meaning. Let me give you another example. This I say to my classes. I'm going to say something, and you tell me what I said. And this is English. Mechanical ability. Mechanical ability. Now, what I really said was mechanical ability, but the general accent or tone pattern on both of those words, they're both four-syllable words, and generally the second syllable is stressed or accented. Mechanical ability. All I did was remove that accent or stress from the second syllable and put on the first and third instead. Mechanical ability. And nobody understood it. Just with a different accent, different tone pattern. Now let me give you another example. This is a sentence, this is a complete sentence that we used to say in the neighborhood I grew up in Los Angeles. All the kids in the neighborhood would say this full sentence this way. And you all know exactly what I said, right? I don't know. Now it's interesting because in the first one, I give you all of the sounds, I give you all of the consonants and the vowels, but a different tone pattern, and everybody misses it. But on the second one, I give you none of the sounds, none of the consonants or vowels, only the tone pattern. And you know exactly what I said without any of the sounds. Now, isn't that interesting? So is English a tone language? To a degree. Most languages are, even though it's not like Chinese or a few other tone languages. But so yeah, different accent, stress, tone patterns. Also, they started with different languages. Everybody assumes that they both left Jerusalem, so hey, they both started with Hebrew. But the Judeo-Aztecan evidence suggests that the Mulekites came on a Phoenician vessel, and we'll explain that evidence shortly, and it just kind of fell in with the Phoenician speakers. So they were speaking Phoenician by the time, or eventually, probably, or something where that was a prominent language in the mix, or the Creole that eventually developed. Whereas Leahy Ishmael party appears to have been speaking a heavily Aramaicized Hebrew, or a Hebrew-Aramaic mix, or mostly Aramaic with Hebrew. Now, something else we need to explain here. I mentioned that Hebrew is a dialect of Canaanite, and that's because when the Israelites came into Palestine, they adopted the language of the land, which was Canaanite, and Hebrew is that dialect of Canaanite. Hebrew was not spoken where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob came from. In fact, Aramaic was spoken where they came from. In fact, Laban in the Old Testament talks about Laban, the Aramaean. They call him the Syrian, but in Hebrew it's Arami. Laban the Aramaean, the Aramite or Aramaean, and he was the father of Leah and Rachel, the mothers of Israel. They were all speaking Aramaic. So when they came to Palestine, did they drop the Aramaic and all learned Hebrew quickly? A few non-LDS scholars, a few Hebrew Semitic scholars are now beginning to think that they maintained a bilingualism in especially the northern Israel. Southern Israel and Judah, Hebrew seems to have taken better root, but in the northern kingdom, many are suspecting that there are many areas where they just kept the Aramaic and added Hebrew as they wanted to, or some areas wished to. And that is closer to the original language of the Israelites. So Hebrew is not the original language of the Israelites, as many assume. And so this becomes very interesting, this data, and we're going to show you a little bit of it. Let's see, languages change different directions due to contact with different languages. Yes. If Leahy landed wherever and Mulek landed wherever in the Americas, and we know that there are a whole bunch of other things in the Americas besides them, then whatever languages they were next door to would have changed them in different directions, so that after 400 years they'd surely have such different languages they couldn't understand each other. In fact, English of 1066, when the Norman French conquered England, English changed very fast for 300 years. In fact, it changed so fast that a person knowing the English of 1350 AD would have a heck of a time understanding someone of 1066 AD. In fact, we lost 85% of the Old English vocabulary since 1066. We've only maintained 15% of the Old English vocabulary. Yiddish, about the same percentage. We'll talk. I think we got Yiddish mentioned here. Let's go on. So anyway, a number of reasons why they could not understand each other. I've got my little own watch up here to try to keep track of time, and I'm going to try to be the favorite speaker of the day just by being shorter than everybody else. Okay, these are a few examples of the. I call it Semitic P because Hebrew B changed to P. That's the one sound correspondence that I identify for this language, which is the Leahite, I believe. For example, barak, lightning, the word for lightning. In Uto-Aztecan, berok in Mayan. I mean, mayo, not Mayan. That's not Uto-Aztecan. Generally, Uto-Aztecan, we have to reconstruct it, berok. Very interestingly, there are South American language families that have the same word for lightning, berok. And second one, the consonants BYT are the root for to stay overnight, to spend the night, or to lie down. And a noun from that is bayit, or beit, house. And we have that in Uto-Aztecan, Tarahumara, for example. These are abbreviations, by the way, that TR. Are abbreviations for Tarahumara. I'll tell you the abbreviations. So you don't have to, but they're in the book, by the way. Bete, house, very close. Pota, you have to reconstruct that and use that. To lie down, also in certain of the languages, it's the same word, and it means to lie down or spend the night. In Namak Paya means to go home, which is what you do when you spend the night, right? And that capital C simply means that the linguists know that there is a consonant there. They just don't know what it is, but it doubles the next consonant. Another word, bo, is the word for coming, the verbal noun for coming, and it's used as the way to. And in fact, in Uto-Aztecan, bo, and they know there's a consonant at the end, but they don't know what it is. It's the word for road, way, or path. Bat, the word for daughter. It's a double T because it's from an NT in earlier Semitic, and Uto-Aztecan shows the double T. Pata is also the word for daughter. Aramaic, basar, meaning flesh in the male organ. Uto-Aztecan, pisa. Aramaic, baka. In fact, in Aramaic, it actually shows a glottal stop written, even though it's not supposed to be pronounced. Uto-Aztecan actually shows that glottal stop. In fact, we see a number of things in Uto-Aztecan as if they are mispronouncing the proper way to say the Hebrew word. They're reading it a little bit too literally. We see a number of instances in that. We don't have time to go into that right now. But it's in the book. Basar, basirat. The word, an Arabic word for eye. It's not the common word. Ayn is the more common word in both Hebrew and Arabic. However, the Hebrew cognate of that would be boser or boseret, and it matches the Uto-Aztecan word for eye. In fact, all of these OA vowels go to UE, and so that's a consistent match. In fact, I might just mention here that many times in Uto-Aztecan, we see the common Hebrew word becoming less common. It appears, but it just appears very negligibly, whereas a less common word becomes the prominent word. And this is an example. This word for eye is in all 30 Uto-Aztecan languages, 30 of them. Bakura, livestock. In Hebrew, it's bakar, and it also is bakar in most Aramaic dialects. But there's one or two Aramaic dialects in which it's bakura, and Uto-Aztecan happens to match that. In fact, we might be able to identify, get closer geographically where this Semitic came from. Another sound correspondence that's interesting is Proto-Semitic the, and Arabic maintains the, but Aramaic changed it to a D, duh, and Hebrew changed it to a Z. So this word for male in Hebrew is zakar. In Arabic, it would be dhakar. And in Aramaic, it would be dakar. Well, all of these match the Aramaic form. not the Hebrew form. For example, Aramaic dakar, male, it became the common Uto-Aztecan word for man, taka. It appears in all the languages. Dikna, beard the, or chin the. That a at the end is the for masculine nouns. Aramaic puts the at the end instead of the beginning. Beard the, or chin the. Whereas Hebrew, zakan is the Hebrew word, and in Hebrew, the goes in front. So the Hebrew word for the chin would be hazakan, with two long vowels, but Aramaic would be dikna, and the Uto-Aztecan word is t'na. Now the k dropped out, it became a glottal stop, but it matches very well the Aramaic word, not the Hebrew word. Same thing for wolf. Ze'eb is the Hebrew word for wolf, and the wolf in Hebrew would be haze'eb. But in Aramaic, it's dib is the word for wolf, and is the after the noun. So wolf the in Aramaic is dibba, and in Uto-Aztecan the word for wolf is tuppa. Again, one of the consonants, well, I guess it's a glottal stop, so that didn't change. But again, matches the Aramaic perfectly, not the Hebrew. The bot is, would be a plural for flies. That form is not extant in Hebrew, but anyway, taputi for flea. By the way, just a note here, notice that I have first consonant of a cluster disappears or doubles the second. This happens, this is a common kind of thing that happens in languages all over the world. In English, we have debt. We don't say the B in debt. We just say the T, the second consonant. The first one is lost. Same thing with exmit, to emit. The X got lost. It's the first consonant of two consonants in a row. That's a cluster. When you got two consonants in a row, usually one of them's lost, or they change to something else, or the first one is lost and the second one remains. Real common in language change. So exmit becomes emit. Illegal becomes illegal. That in prefix, it maintains itself an incomplete, inconsiderate, but it changes, and it went to an M in front of P, so impossible, improper, but it completely assimilates to an L or an R when you have irresponsible or illegal or illegible. So that general principle, keep in mind. We're going to see it a few times in this data. Now the Semitic aleph or glottal stop changed to W in Uto-Aztecan much of the time. Sometimes it's by a round vowel like O or U with a glottal stop. And this change actually happens in a few instances in Arabic. For example, sa'ala, to ask. When the two form with a doubled middle consonant, sa'ala, it's hard to double a glottal stop. And there are some Arabic dialects that actually change that to a W, sawala. And that is what happens in this Leahite dialect, it appears. For example, ari, it's the Hebrew word for lion, and in Aramaic too. Wadi is the Uto-Aztecan word for mountain lion. Ya'amin is the third person singular, he believes. And if you're going to, with an object, he believes him or he believes it would be ya'amino. Well, Uto-Aztecan word for believe reconstructs to yawamin, exactly the same thing with the glottal stop going to a W. And there's one language that actually maintains the O, and it's translated as to believe him or believe it. With the object in the form of the verb. Egoz, the Hebrew word for nut tree. Woko, Uto-Aztecan word for nut tree. Again, the glottal stop changing to W. A consonant, they know it, there's something there, but they don't know exactly what it is. Oh, here's a wonderful example. Semitic ya or ya with different lengths of vowels and so forth. To be beautiful, it appears, I think it's in Aramaic, and it's in, maybe it's in Hebrew and Arabic too. I can't remember. But in Uto-Aztecan, this is Luiseño, yawayiwa, for being pretty or beautiful. Serrano, ya'an, to be pretty or beautiful. One of them actually shows the glottal stop. The other one changed it to a W. All Uto-Aztecanists, except those two, is related. Even they don't have an explanation for why one has W and the other has glottal stop. But and here's the common word for man in Hebrew, ish. And we do have 2 or 3 Uto-Aztecan languages that have wasi for person or man. And again, glottal stop changing to W. We also have woman, isha or eshet for if it's possessed, or isht if it's got a pronominal suffix. Again, it perfectly matches the Uto-Aztecan word. Arza, earth word or down, whatsa in Uto-Aztecan. Again, glottal stop changing to W. Here's another sound correspondence. And by the way, I'm only giving you a few examples of these. We're only giving you, I think, about 100 plus examples out of the 1,500 that are in the book and out of the 300 plus in the other one, just so you can get an idea. The pharyngeal H, ha, it's different than English H. It's a very deep down by the pharynx, so it's a ha. In fact, both of these pharyngeals go to rounding. So, in fact, they go to hu. Usually, this pharyngeal H usually goes to hu, or it'll go to w-o-u, another form of rounding later in the word usually. For example, habak or habaka in earlier vowelings to do that. And hupak in Uto-Aztecan. Hanak, to train or to dedicate. This is the word that Hanukkah comes from. Dedication or consecration. Kawiya, huneke, to take an Indian bath. A consecration of sorts. Hunakte, to raise young, to direct, show, teach, train. Hamam, hum with a double second, third consonants is M. Huma, wash, bathe, same thing. Hamal, carry, lift, pick up. Homa, it's missing the final consonant. Another common change in languages is to lose the beginnings and ends of words sometimes. Okay, the pharyngeal ein. This is, I should have put in here, in English, we say Saudi Arabia, but in Arabic there are two eins in there. There's one in each word. There's an ein between the a and the u of Saudi, and there's another ein at the beginning of Arabia. So the way you'd say Saudi Arabia in Arabic is Saudi Arabia, and that's a very deep guttural, it's a pharyngeal. And what's interesting is that the pharyngeal Phoenician ein became Greek O. When the Greeks borrowed the Phoenician alphabet, they used aleph for A, and they used he for A, which became E for us, and they used yod, E, the Y or the I for E or I, but they used the ein for O. The ein symbol was in Old Hebrew, Old Semitic was a circle, and that's exactly what O is in Greek, and the Latins borrowed the Greek alphabet, and the English borrowed the Latin alphabet, so English is really just Reformed Egyptians since the Phoenicians got it from part of the alphabet from the Phoenicians. No, that's a stretch, that was a joke. And so, but the fact that they use the ein symbol to O would suggest that the ein had rounding with it anciently, and that's exactly what we see in Uto-Aztecan. It also goes to W or to round vowels like O and U. For example, agol, to be round. Wakol in Uto-Aztecan, round or rounded. Paka, with different vowelings for this P, Ka, and Ein. Whiteness or species of fungus. In Uto-Aztecan, Pakua, a mushroom or fungus. Again, the W corresponds with the ein. Almat, to cloud over, become dark in Aramaic at least. Wuma, with some kind of consonant. Again, the evidence shows that there's a consonant at the end of this word. And again, everything matches. W for the ein, M, and the last consonant is there, but they don't know what it is. Can't prove what it is. Arabic, aqib, heel footprint, woki, track footprint. Sibyl in Aramaic, Syriac, the word for finger, but in Hebrew it's etzba or esba. In modern Hebrew they change the sa to tsa. So in modern Hebrew they say etzba, but esba in Hebrew. But in Aramaic and Syriac they don't have that initial vowel; they have sibyl, and that's exactly what we have in Uto-Aztecan. Again, matching the Aramaic word, not the Hebrew word. Da'ak, let's skip that one. We don't have time for everything anyway. Nom, to be lovely, good, beautiful. Numa, noma, Uto-Aztecan for good, well, pretty. Rasha, another Semitic root for be wicked, act, be guilty, do bad. And in Uto-Aztecan, tasawa, be or do bad. By the way, initial R at the beginning of the word goes to T. I think we have more examples of that. How am I doing on time? I have been going 25 minutes, so I'm still good, right? Muke, okay, this is originally munke. It's NKY is the root, but it's a hof al participle. And so the Hebrew form would be muke for smitten. Judaic for muki, die, be sick, smitten in whatever way. And this is where the Hopi word moki comes from. The Hopi O corresponds to U of the other Judeo-Aztecan languages, smitten or dead or sick. Takipa, singular, takipu, plural, Judeo-Aztecan, takipu, happens to match the plural. We see evidence of this. That some of the times the third person plural verbs are the ones that, by the way, we don't see real conjugation patterns in Judeo-Aztecan. We do see it in some other language families that we're not going to mention yet. But Semitic, Judeo-Aztecan has a lot of fossilized third person singular, third person plural forms. And this is one of the third person plural forms. Kutonet, shirt-like tunic, kutun, word for shirt. Participle pone, to turn to or look. Judeo-Aztecan, puni, turn, look, see. Again, it's another example like that poser that we talked about where the OE goes to UE, the vowels generally rise in Judeo-Aztecan. Panav, or panau, face, his. Pana, Judeo-Aztecan word for face. Pane, originally from pani, is the face of or the surface of, and pani, Judeo-Aztecan, on or on the surface of. Shipa, make smooth. I'm just going to race through these. This is an interesting one. Shechem, Hebrew word for shoulder. Shikmo, if it's possessed. The Samaritan or Aramaic word is more often shekom. And in Judeo-Aztecan, the word in most languages is sukkah, matching the Aramaic voweling, except for Numic, it actually shows the M, sikum, with the vowel changing toward the bilabial. Lip we have, shawa we have, shor, navel, Arabic sur, navel cord, in Judeo-Aztecan, sur, navel. SNW are the consonants for the root to shine or be beautiful. Hopi, soniwa, be beautiful, bright, brilliant. Arabic, khan, with a double N, word for shelter, house, nest. It's a less common word, but it becomes the common word in Judeo-Aztecan for house. The beit, the more common Semitic word, is found, but not nearly as common. And again, I mentioned that happens often in our data. Oh, this is fun. Initial R became T. We have lots of examples of that. Ra'ah, to see. Tawa, to see or find. Rima is the Aramaic word for rock. Rimata, it's a feminine noun, so with the at the end, it'd be rimata, stone, the. And the word for rock in Judeo-Aztecan is tumata. And the word for antelope in Aramaic, ra'eman'a. Okay, the a again is the. So ra'eman is the word for antelope. Antelope, the. Or another form of it in Aramaic is re'mana. And Judeo-Aztecan word for antelope is tamana. Matches the Aramaic wonderfully. Rakabu, they climbed up on. This is a plural form. They climbed up on or mounted. Judeo-Aztecan, to climb up anything. Tapu, again. Or tapu, again, the KB cluster. Remember we showed you earlier when two consonants are together, often the first one is lost, or it'll change to double the second one, exactly what we see in Judeo-Aztecan. Another word from that root, rakba, or rikba, it has two vowelings in Aramaic. It's the upper millstone in a grinding mortar where you're grinding grain. The upper stone that you hold to grind the grain with is called the rakba, the rikba, because it's riding on the other one or mounted up on it. And the Judeo-Aztecan word for that mortar or that pestle that you use is tupa, again, matching the Aramaic form wonderfully. Oh, the Egyptian data. I'm going to have to skim faster here, okay? Sabak or subak is probably the Egyptian word. Sobek is the Greek form of it. Egyptian didn't show the vowels, but later Coptic did. Although what's interesting is that Judeo-Aztecan actually shows more accurately the vowels and the consonants than Coptic does from ancient Egyptian lots of times. But anyway, sobek, Greek sobek means the original vowels are probably subak. Udo-Aztecan, supak, sipak. This is only in the Aztec branch, is the word for crocodile, matches wonderfully. And I'm not the first one to find this. Cyrus Gordon, the internationally renowned Semitic scholar who did the initial work on Ugaritic, is the one who suggested this, and there's the source right there. I'm just following up and adding another 399 terms to the one that Cyrus Gordon found. Takas to pierce, takso to pierce, kam, black, koma, dark black, nami, to travel, traverse, Udo-Aztecan, nami, that's where nami, namek comes from. Shem, go walk. In fact, we have evidence of that vowel being im, shim, and in Udo-Aztecan, sima, to go or leave. Wer, to be great or big. Weru is another form. Udo-Aztecan, weru. Again, the initial Egyptian B goes to P, just like the other Semitic data we were just looking at. Different vowelings of calf of the leg for sabak, sipika, lower leg, sabti, enclosure, sapti, enclosure, kabab, kopa, babit, papi. This is interesting. Bashi is the verb for spit or vomit. Bashu is the noun. It can be the vomit itself, or it could be a person vomiting, or it can be the act of vomiting. And interesting, Udo-Aztecan keeps the noun form and makes it a verb. This happens a lot in Udo-Aztecan, verbalizing a noun. And we're going to see this again pretty soon. The word for breast comes from Egyptian. Saba, star. Sipo, the word for Udo-Aztecan, star. Okay, this ka going to ka. In all of these, you have these intervocalic, what were often intervocalic forms, like the ka going to a stop, ka, and the ara going to t. And so the Udo-Aztecan at least is consistent that way in showing these, what might be called intervocalic forms becoming initial forms. But this is like what we just showed you. To ki is the verb to be drunk or drink. But to ko is the word for a drunkard. And Udo-Aztecan uses the noun form, again, to ku. Kapshi, this is wonderful because Udo-Aztecan word for thigh, this is in almost all the Udo-Aztecan languages, but for 100 years it was thought to be kasi, until one Udo-Aztecanist found a P in one of the Udo-Aztecan languages, and then we all realized that there is evidence in some of the other languages of a cluster being reduced, and so now the accepted form is kapsi for thigh, which just happens to match perfectly the Egyptian word for thigh. We don't know the vowelings, but kapshi is exactly what the consonants would be. Same thing with buttocks. The field and country, 67 is interesting because sakat is the word for field, country, pasture, willow. And in Udo-Aztecan, we have sakat, which means grass and willow, pasture and willow. I mean, I didn't think grass and willows were anything alike, but the Egyptian meant both of those, and the Udo-Aztecan means both of those. And not only that, but in Hopi, we have the feminine prefix for the. In Egyptian, you have pa for masculine nouns, the something masculine noun, ta for the feminine noun, na for the plural nouns, and fossilized into this Hopi term is the feminine prefix for the, and this is a feminine noun in Egyptian. And there's a number of those in Udo-Aztecan. Slaughter. Okay, we're not gonna have time. Let's just go. Oh my goodness, this always happens. I'm just gonna go about half the data now. Okay, Chabi. This shows the pharyngeal age going to hu. Chabi, to make festival, hupiya, hanakat, beer or drinkers, hunaka, drink or alcohol in Udo-Aztecan. Oh, this one, okay. Hetep or hotpa, the Egyptian word for peace or being peaceable. It also means for the sun to set. It also means to bury a person. It has all of those meanings in Egyptian. In Udo-Aztecan, hupi means peaceable and go down and sink. That's where the word Hopi comes from. The Hopi mean that they're the peaceable ones. And the fact that it's a P instead of a V means that there's a doubled consonant, because if it were a single P, it would be Hovi, but that's not what it is. They say Hopi. So, and then all these others, Let's go on. Here's number 80. M glottal stop E for lion, the Egyptian word for lion. In Coptic, it's mui. In Uto-Aztecan, it's mawiya. Remember again, the glottal stop to W, like in the Semitic data. Ta'a or ta'i, man or male. Tawa, tawi in Uto-Aztecan language is man, male. Ka'i, kawi in Uto-Aztecan. Okay, again, we don't have time for all of them. Okay, above is Leahy's Egyptian and Semitic. Below is Mule's Phoenician, okay? In this body of data, we have Hebrew B changing to qua. Now that might sound strange, but in Indo-European you have a correspondence of Greek P with Latin qua, and so these kind of correspondences do happen in language change. But a number of examples, in fact, I think there are about 25 examples in this book of this sound correspondence. In fact, more like over 30, I think, if you count the non-initial ones. Anyway, bashel, to boil, cook, ripen. Kwasa, they know there's a consonant at the end. Cook, ripen. And by the way, this is the Hebrew form of the same word we saw before, and the Mulekite dialect has the Phoenician form, whereas the Leahite dialect had the Aramaic form. Notice that in both cases, the stressed syllable remains ah, and the unstressed syllable goes to Uto-Aztecan schwa equivalent, which is e. Balak, kwelu, Bahamat. Oh, this is interesting. Semitic Bahamat. It's Bahama in Hebrew. They lost the H, but originally Bahamat, back. And Uto-Aztecan, kwahami, word for back. Baka, yes. All these wonderful words that we don't have time for, and we don't have time for those either. Oh, I can't afford to skip this, can I? Let me watch here. I've been going 40 minutes. Let's hurry. I'll just give you a few of them. Okay, the Semitic ga or ka both go to in this second body of data, the Mulekite body of data. So we have a word like gasa or gishesh, gasha or gishesh or gashish, or in, yeah, that's what it is. Anyway, so nisi. By the way, yeah, that curly Q, N, is the NG of sing. It's velar nasal. Uto-Aztecan, nisi. That's what it corresponds, the g corresponds to in Uto-Aztecan. Garar, to ruminate, saw. You know, when you see a cow chewing its cud, its jaw goes kind of in a circular back and forth motion, or a saw will go back and forth. Ngaya or ngaya, either one, means move side to side in Uto-Aztecan. And in one of the languages, it means to move in a circle side to side, just like the ruminating motion. Gadal, braid or weave. Ngarai, I forgot to tell you that the L goes to Y in this body of data, but ngarai, crocheted or woven. Ngaroita, spider web. Kina, the ka also goes to nga, so kina, funeral song or dirge. Luiseño, nginang na, it duplicates it. Syrian, kankin, or originally kankin, to chant or sing, and again, usually funeral stuff. That seems like the only time they sang. Ngangi in Uto-Aztecan, a wonderful match. Tiken, tingen, to straighten. Okay, we have to show you this pair, 107, 108. 107 shows the Phoenician or Mulekite sound correspondences. The glottal stop is dropped, the g goes to the and this is angapu from the Mulekite body of data. Also in Uto-Aztecan we have, and it means wing and arm. Also in the Uto-Aztecan data we have wakapu, which has the Leahite correspondences of initial glottal stop to W and the g devoiced to k, but not velar nasal. And there we have a lot of these pairs where, so what we have in fact, now I need to, let's just start talking. Oh, I can't skip this. My goodness. Anyway, what was I going to say? Let me remind me. Yeah, well, the book, it's all in the book, okay? Try the for sale on the front and just, Yes, lots of pairs. Anyway, what we have is in this Semitic, in Uto-Aztecan, we have about 30 to 40% of Uto-Aztecan being this Egyptian or Semitic stuff. Of that 40%, about 3/4 of it matches the Leahy stuff, okay? Has the sound correspondence of B to P and so forth. About 1/4 of it has the Mulekite sound correspondences, which suggests that when these two peoples mixed, they taught the Mulekites the language of the Nephites, but about 1/4 of the language was from the Mulekites. So this language mix kept both things. In fact, in all of Uto-Aztecan, there is both, some words in all 30 languages, so it's apparent that that's what happened. Anyway, we don't have time to go over this. Let's just talk about it. I'll tell you all about it. Here's another example of one from Semitic P, one from Semitic Qua. So Semitic Qua data has the sound changes of Phoenician, where Proto-Semitic Cha went to Ha, but that did not happen in Israeli Semitic for another 1,000 years, so that's why we know this has Phoenician sound correspondences. Also, the fact that the Mulekites named their river Sidon or Sidon. That Sidon is a Phoenician port. It's one of the main Phoenician cities. It is not Israeli geography. So the fact that they named their main river system a Phoenician name, and that their sound correspondences match Phoenician, not Israeli Semitic, suggests to my mind that the one means of escape from Jerusalem when the destruction is happening is to hop on a Phoenician vessel. They were the major seafaring power of the time, and I'm just guessing that's how they got here. So if they hop on a Phoenician vessel, there'd be lots of Phoenicians on the vessel, and who knows, maybe Greeks and a few other things, everything in the Mediterranean. And if that's how they got here, no wonder, and who knows what their language looked like, but we have, nevertheless, lots of interesting stuff to look at and consider. I just said that. That's the bottom of there. Semitic P, on the other hand, and the Egyptian has the same sound correspondences, and that matches the ancient Israelite Semitic in the sound correspondences that they have before 300 BC, suggesting these two are Lehi's and Nephi's language. However, and we already talked about this, more often lines with Aramaic than Hebrew, and I've already talked about. So the Leahy Ishmael party's language seems to have been quite Aramaic-like, or Hebrew, mostly Aramaic mix. And again, we all get to be surprised, like we said right at the beginning. This also may best explain Lehi's language as consisting of, where he says, the language of my father, which consists of the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians. Notice he did not say the language of the Jews. This Hebrew stuff, my dad learned to write, learned the alphabet with which you could write either Hebrew or Aramaic, and the languages are close enough that most could easily be bilingual in both, so they can read the Hebrew scriptures. But his language consists of the learning of the Jews, this scribal craft of reading and writing with the alphabet, but he actually maybe knew Aramaic. There was a speaker of Aramaic and Hebrew, probably bilingual. And the language of the Egyptians. In other words, the language of the Egyptians probably means the language of the Egyptians, and not the many interpretations have been given it in the last 65 years. But anyway, that's basically, I think that's... conclusions. I better forget those. Given the sizable amount of Egyptian and Uto-Aztecan suggests the language of the Egyptians means the language of the Egyptians. 2, the Lehi Ishmael Semitic P was very Aramaic-like, a northern Israeli suspicion. 3, the Mulekite language may have been Hebrew when fleeing Jerusalem, but their probable passage on a Phoenician vessel had them shifting to the dialect of the majority, the Phoenician majority residually apparent in the Semitic Quad date of Uto-Aztecan. Okay, I got to say, it's all in the book, and I think I'm done. Only 45 minutes, so. What does Uto-Aztecan mean? This language family, there's 30 languages, and Utes are on the north, Aztecs on the south. That's where it got its name, with all the others in between. Good question. Is 25% peer response a typical response rate for this kind of work? Probably. I thought it was actually pretty good. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting much more wrath, but it's just early on in getting out there. Ask me again in 5 years. I'm gonna write a few. In fact, the one Semitist that responded favorably, Hebrew professor of the Jewish university system, they have a campus in Los Angeles, New York, and Jerusalem, sent them a copy. I sent them a copy of this book, and she wrote back. She's the one that responded favorably. Yeah, this is interesting. Yeah, you got the sound recording. Yeah, this looks good. And she happened to be the editor for the Journal of Jewish Languages, which publishes articles on languages like Yiddish and Ladino, these language mixes that have a Jewish component to them. And in fact, I was going to talk about Yiddish, but I ran out of time. Did that answer that question? Oh, yeah, okay. What do you mean by the term matches? Oh, yeah, it corresponds to it. It's a cognate set match. Yeah. I better get my glasses on. Are the cognate similarities more prevalent in the Southwest or in Central America? How relevant are they in Central America? Okay, Uto-Aztecan is, you saw the map, and there's some in Central America. So that's the Uto-Aztecan language family. There are half a dozen language families in the northern Andes that have a lot of interesting stuff that I'm not going to tell you which language families yet until they get more developed and we have the evidence to back up what I'm saying. And there are a couple of them on the East Coast in the eastern United States too. One of them with just as much as we've got in Uto-Aztecan, but again, not going to tell you what it is until we get it backed up better. But there's a lot of interesting stuff out there. Problem is, I'm the only one working on it that I know of, and it only took me 30 years to do Uto-Aztecan, and I see 12 more language families that need this work. And so if any of you are interested in being linguists or talking your kids into it, we could really use some help. I'm not going to live another 30 times 12, 360 years, so we could use some help. One researcher in Georgia has linked many place names, languages there to the Itzamayim. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the southeast that appears to have come up from Central America, but I'm not an authority on that yet. I answered that one. What language do the Jaredites use? Hey, now there's a good question. My opinion is that a lot of the language diversity in the Americas is from leftover Jaredites. You have a lot of Bering Strait stuff too. In fact, only 2 out of those 170 language families have been demonstrated linguistically to be from across the Bering Strait. Na-Dene and Eskimo-Aleut. And Eskimo-Aleut still straddles the Bering Strait. All the rest, nobody's produced anything, but that doesn't mean, the DNA shows a lot of Bering Strait blood. But I figure that probably Bering Strait, Jaredite, Leahite, and a whole bunch of other things we don't know of all have contributed to the Native Americans. And exactly what Jaredite, I've got my ideas on that, but again, in fact, if a young scholar wants to devote his life to reconstructing Jaredite or a branch of Jaredite, that'd be a very good, worthwhile project. It can't be much older than Indo-European, but I don't have enough life left. How has your research been received by mainstream Uto-Aztecan scholars? Actually, I think I answered that. I sent it to 12, and 4 of the 12, thumbs up. 8 of the 12, silent, but none of them refuted it with specifics. None of them said, no, you're wrong because of this or this or this. And so that's actually a pretty good test, either yes or silence. That's it? Okay. Thank you.